what can a guilty conscience do to us as human beings? It could crush you. It could destroy your life. Some people live in guilt and shame their entire life. I don't know if you guys all have the same experiences, but most human beings at some point in their life, but not all, do something that's especially despicable. Something that's really harsh or cruel to another human being. And you may think about it years later and think, why in the world did I do that? And be ashamed of it years and years later. You look at stories like veterans that come back from war and how they feel about what they had to do during the war. And other situations too with policemen and firemen and some of the situations they endure. Other people too involved in all kinds of things in life. There's things that happen to us that drive us, our core, to the edge of despair because we're filled with guilt, because we feel like we should have done something better. Have you ever heard of something called survivor's guilt? And there's some people feel very guilty because they lived through an experience where other people died, and they feel, why did they survive? Well, guilt's a very powerful emotional feeling that people feel, and just the fact that they now remember, Joseph, they think, doesn't know what they're saying. They think he only speaks Egyptian. Joseph can hear every word they're saying and understand it too. Then in verse 22, Reuben replied, "Didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy? But you wouldn't listen. Now we must give an accounting for his blood." They did not realize that Joseph could understand them since he was using an interpreter. Verse 24, he turned away from them and began to weep. But then he turned back and spoke to them again. And he had Simeon taken from them and bound before their eyes. So, first off, what does Joseph learn right away with the first statements before we get to Reuben? And what does God see here? What is God observing here?
Repentant hearts.
He's seeing hearts that are repentant. Now, have they done anything to fix it? You know, repentance is one thing. You can feel repentance, but sometimes repentance involves taking some kind of action. And at this point, I don't really think that they have done anything in that respect, because I'm not sure they would even know what to do at this point to fix it. But sometimes repentance involves that. And we're going to look at some scriptures that talk about this a little bit later. So repentance and grief for their sin, when they first committed these sins, did they feel that at first? No. Rick?
I'm thinking, after a period of time, their guilt, I don't think they lived their whole life with guilt. It was there. I think after a while, you have a tendency, and even some things that we do wrong, we want to forget about it. I think this reminded them, and now the guilt is all coming back. It's almost like we haven't been honest with our Father. We haven't repented to God. And now they're remembering, they can see their brother pleading for his life, and now they're remembering, so now the guilt they had stored, hidden, or whatever, it's all on their hearts.
It could be. It could very well be true. What does Joseph learn about Reuben here? This is interesting too. Reuben's the firstborn. He's the oldest child of Leah. He should be the family leader. What does he learn about Reuben from this exchange?
That Reuben was on his side.
Yeah, he tried to stop it. So Joseph can see that, and can Joseph be assured that he's telling the truth? That he tried to stop it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this wasn't a peaceful conversation between brothers. I mean, Reuben's really irritated. I told you this was gonna happen kind of idea.
Yeah.
And you see who gets picked up by Simeon, so there's probably a very, troubling, conversation here among all the brothers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm pretty sure he realizes that Reuben was not involved.
Yeah, and Reuben has 9 witnesses that knows whether he said it or not. And they don't question him about his honesty in his statement about this. That he told them not to do it, which says something good about Reuben to a point. He should have done way more.
He went along with the plan too,
He
so.
still went along with it, you're right.
Right.
But he tried to mitigate it because they were gonna kill him. So at least he stopped that aspect of it. What do you think Joseph thought when he heard Reuben's statement? He probably never heard this dialogue. Remember, he was in the cistern. He was in there crying for his life while they're out there having dinner. Probably laughing about the whole thing. He doesn't know about this conversation. He didn't know that Reuben at least tried to plead for his life. Now, in verse 24, who does Joseph pick to stay in jail while they go back to Canaan? What's the birth order of Simeon? He's the second of Leah's children. I think Levi was after that. Who were the 2 brothers that caused the mayhem, the murderous mayhem in the city of Shechem? Who were the 2 brothers that instigated that whole murderous plot? It was these 2 guys, Levi and Simeon. They were the ones that led out there with the swords, butchering all kinds of innocent people for something one man did. So Simeon was well known to be a hot-tempered man, and at the end of their lives, even their father Jacob tells the world that you should not enter into their counsel because of their cruelty and harshness in life. So Simeon was not a good guy. He had a real bad attitude, at least earlier in life. I don't know how he was later on. So when Joseph picks somebody to stay, he picks Simeon. He could have picked Reuben as the firstborn as being in charge, but he realizes that Reuben didn't do that. He tried to get him out of it. But Simeon, with his reputation for cruelty, do you think he was involved in the whole plot to get Joseph killed? Oh, you could bet on it. Him and Levi were probably both saying, let's kill him. And he probably remembers at least that aspect of it too. So Simeon is the one that ends up getting thrown in jail while everybody else goes back. And when Joseph hears all of this dialogue, what's his emotional response? He weeps. And he had to hide himself from them. And he turns away because he was weeping at the whole thing too. So this is a very powerful emotional scene for him at this particular point. So,
You know, Jeff, that might be the reason why he didn't do anything to Reuben, because he probably felt like Reuben was the one brother who would do the right thing if he sent him back. Because he could tell Reuben was a little remorseful for what happened.
Yeah.
So he might want to try to make this all right and convince the rest of them.
Yeah.
Do what we're told.
yeah, Reuben is probably the one too that would, his father would respect too, because Reuben obviously, part of the reason I think Reuben didn't want him killed, because he realized what it would do to their father. Because even in the earlier dialogue, it is mentioned too that, you know, how am I gonna go back and tell my father about his son's death? So Reuben at least has some good attitudes about some things, and it comes out in other dialogues here too. This whole thing is gonna play out, as we go along to here in some very interesting things. Verse 25 now. Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain, to put each man's silver back in his sack, and to give them provisions for their journey. After this was done for them, they loaded their grain on their donkeys and left. At the place where they stopped for the night, one of them opened his sack to get feed for his donkey and saw his silver in the mouth of his sack. My silver has been returned, he said to his brothers. Here it is in my sack. Their hearts sank, and they turned to each other, trembling, and said, what is this that God has done to us? Oh my goodness. I mean, if you had a knife, you could cut it, you know, the drama right through the air right here too. Once again, they see that there's money in the bag. What does that make it look like they've done?
Stolen gold.
It looks like they stole the money from the guy who doesn't trust them in the first place. And once again, who do they blame for their misfortune?
God.
They're blaming God. God is punishing them for their sin of doing what?
Stealing Joseph.
Yeah, what they did to Joseph. And their harshness and cruelty when they're sitting there listening to the poor boy plead for his life, and they just laughed it off. So they're once again, they're looking, what has God done to us? What kind of hope in life can you have if that's what you're thinking? God is out to get you right off the bat. Is there any hope for anything?
No, you don't have any hope.
You don't have any hope whatsoever of anything good happening the rest of your life. You are walking dead men in their mind. That's pretty much probably what they were thinking. We are in deep, deep trouble.
You know, and I think that's the place where Satan wants to get everybody.
Yeah.
That's where he wants to guide you to that place where you feel like there's nothing I can do to get out of this situation. God's not gonna, he's not gonna forgive me for the things I've done. I got no chance.
Yeah. And you see many of the Psalms are written too, when some of the prophets were suffering themselves, you know, they would ask the question, why? And people do that today. But I think some people today in this country, they all think they're all okay, so I'm not sure they ever really experience this level of guilt in some respects. So I'm kind of out of time here. Verse 29, when they came to their father, Jacob, in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them. They said, the man who is lord over the land spoke harshly to us and treated us as though we were spying on the land. But we said to him, we are honest men, we are not spies. We were 12 brothers, sons of one father, one who is no more, and the youngest is now with our father in Canaan. So they update their father on the situation, and next week when we get into it a little bit too, we're gonna learn a little something about Jacob too. Because Jacob has a response here too that is kind of disheartening too when you read it. If any of you ever felt like in your life, and I don't think it really matters whether you're a Christian or before you're a Christian, where you just felt like everything in the world was against you.
Yep.
Nothing's going right.
Yep.
Just, you feel like in some sense you're doomed. I think most people at some time or another sometimes experience that. And we're gonna go through that next week when we look at how Jacob feels about some of this. So, any final questions or thoughts? All right, we'll see you next week.
Every time they go back,
probably didn't keep score, but it was okay. I had more good shots than I had bad.
See how quick that comes along.
Yeah.
Talk about that dress for like.